Let's get started, and permission granted to interrupt me at any time. Okay, so, and Catherine, if I don't see the chat, just interrupt me for them, or just go off and mute everyone. You don't have to stick to the chat. So we're going to be talking today about how to reduce interruptions and chores and run a highly productive business. And yes, you'll be able to focus more on growing your business, focus more on working on the business rather than in the business. I'm sure you've heard that before, but I love that phrase. So I'm Maddie Martin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Growth for Smith AI. We really started off just as an advanced virtual receptionist service, answering calls, and we've since expanded in a lot of ways. So now what we really refer to ourselves as is customer engagement and the platform for conducting that on your behalf through calls, through chat, through text, through social messages, such as Facebook. We've handled millions of conversations, mostly for solo and small businesses. And most of those businesses are in professional services. So exactly, what I'm hearing from you in the chat that you're working on as well. So our goals and objectives are to identify first, what are the distractions and time-consuming tasks that become chores and interruptions in your day. The understanding that we'll establish around communication systems is going to be focused on phone systems, how we handle calls, and how we focus on responsiveness being one of the most important things for business growth. The importance of email, text messaging, and web chat to be multi-channel for your business to respond across wherever anyone is contacting you. That might be your Google business profile, whatever Google is calling it now, Google My Business, Google Business Profile. You all know what I'm talking about. And how do we make sure that we're covering our bases on those channels and leaning into where our customers are saying and our clients are saying, this is where I prefer to actually reach you. This is how I prefer to communicate. And we can read those messages really clearly by how they first step in and approach our business. We'll also cover the basics on how to start using these systems if you're not super familiar, and how to transition from maybe older systems like a landline to an advanced VoIP system that will allow you to be more flexible and mobile as you run your business. Advanced techniques for how to maximize the impact of these systems, and then your game plan for actually implementing them and reducing the distractions so you can be free to work on your business rather than being so beholden to working in your business. The 7 steps that we're going to talk about are managing inbound communications, really focusing on phone and chat, automating lead capture and qualification, and I'll talk more about lead screening techniques, how to hand off new client intake and what those intake forms really should look like. And we can talk specifically about, photography and health and wellness coaching, and streamlining appointment scheduling and reminders. This is one of the most important things, is to make sure that your appointments are a commitment that you have as like an early agreement with your new potential clients, that they're showing up for those. How do you get them to elect to be there? How do you get them to show up even after they've elected to, schedule that time? And how do you make sure that that time is really valuable? And speaking of value, how are you collecting payments? How are you ensuring that you're getting paid and that method of getting paid is convenient and easy for your clients? The last 2 things are really systematically looking at referrals. And the very last thing is how to integrate your communications into your existing systems. Make sure that you have visibility into your business performance with those systems. So who cares? Well, let's sort of just look at the data and understand that across every industry, whether you are in photography, legal, financial advising, health and wellness coaching, you're running a, skin spa or whatever. That sounds creepy. Let's just say a health and wellness spa. So 82% of consumers expect an immediate response to a sales inquiry. Same goes for a service inquiry. Same goes for a support inquiry. Whatever the reason is for contacting your business, whether they are an existing or new potential client, an instantaneous response is expected. And that's informed by our experience with Uber, with Amazon, with next day delivery, with tap and get a car at your house, right? So we've got this very, very responsive business model that's being forced upon smaller businesses who don't have the resources that Amazon and Uber do, but set the consumer expectations. So that's a constraint that we understand is a reality in the marketplace. Then we've got the fact that 50% of lead gen budgets are wasted on leads who are never contacted, and the vast majority of marketing leads never convert into sales because they're never contacted or because they're never followed up with properly. And we'll talk about the impact that follow-up has later. But what we can see here is that there's an unbelievable amount of waste. If you're spending even $1,000 a month, maybe it's $5,000 a month, maybe it's $500 a month, that money is precious. You earned it, you don't want to waste it. And yet there's a dilemma when you have a client meeting and a new lead is trying to reach you. You literally can't do two things at the same time. So you have to be able to delegate, to automate, to get some of these systems in place so that work can be done even if you're busy and your marketing dollars are not wasted when you're faced with this dilemma of, do I work on the existing business, that person who's in front of me, or do I answer to the new business that's knocking on my door? Now, we also know, I need to update the statistic, but the rise in spam calls didn't just happen in 2019, it also happened in 2020, 2021, 2022. Still, no one's really doing a whole lot about it. Maybe it's better in Canada than it is in the US, but it is just atrocious for most North American businesses. And as a result, the onus is on us and the business owners, us as a technology provider in communication services, to reduce the amount of interruptions that come through that are totally nuisance interruptions, right? Those are the spam and sales calls, even wrong numbers and hang-ups and things like that. The person is in the wrong place. They still are an interruption. You still, took time away from the task that you're doing to answer the phone because you said, hey, Maddie told me, let's answer the phone every time. And then you're just answering a ton of spam calls. So that doesn't work either. You can't just swing totally in one direction or the other. There has to be a layer here that helps to filter what actually is coming through to you. So if we think that if we don't answer the calls, what happens? Maybe they'll leave a voicemail. And if they do leave a voicemail, then you have to call them back, which very rarely happens for most business owners. I will tell you, even in the legal space that we serve very often, law firms, lawyers, right? They are not calling back the majority of the time. So you can imagine how valuable and how well-educated that industry must be. And they're not doing the one thing that makes total sense, which is if someone leaves you a voicemail and they communicate they want to work with you, they've probably got money to spend on you and you're not calling them back. Why? Because it often feels like a waste of time. You've already lost the lead. And we make that assumption and we shoot ourselves in the foot because we don't even try then to call that person back. We already use voicemail to screen them because an unknown number, you're thinking, well, that unknown number is probably nothing, right? I mean, I've been getting a lot of spam calls lately. I don't need to answer every random number that calls me. It's probably spam. I've already had 3 calls today that are spam. And then you use voicemail as a screening mechanism. Now, 1, is your voicemail full? Because then you're really in trouble. 2, are you communicating your level of responsiveness if someone does leave you a voicemail? Like, does your message actually say, we listen to our voicemail messages 3 times a day and you will hear back from us by the end of the day? If it's after 6, you'll hear back from us by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Like, almost never do we set those expectations. So when someone leaves a voicemail, they sort of consider it to be a black hole. It's no surprise that less than half of incoming calls are answered, because if you're behaving that way, then so are they, right? Like if someone calls my cell phone and it's an unknown number, and I don't personally run my own business, I work for Smith AI, I'm not going to answer it. It's probably spam. So that's a problem when those new clients also have unknown numbers. When that new client who's now a paying existing client has an unknown number because you didn't put them in your phone or your VoIP app or whatever, there's a friction point here that results in a poor experience for those who do need or want to reach you. And we have to be mindful about how that affects our business outcomes. The other thing is with respect to screening, we know that the majority of consults that happen don't result in retained client, right? And why is that? Well, we probably didn't set the proper expectations. We probably didn't make it hard enough to answer necessary questions before scheduling the consult. We allow people to schedule consults with us because we use tools like Calendly that don't actually have a filter on them. And we don't look ahead at what that consult looks like and pre-plan for that meeting. You can imagine if we say, you can schedule a meeting and we don't contact them before that meeting happens, like, hey, Catherine, I'm so glad that you set up time to talk about Smith AI. I just want to understand, like, what's your current call volume, who's calling you, and why is this an important problem for you to solve right now? Well, if I can't see that Catherine is going to answer those questions, that's problematic because Catherine may not show up to the call. No offense, Catherine, I'm sure you show up to all your calls. And, you have a gap where there's tension, where you've got a block on your calendar and you think and hope and pray that person's going to show up to that meeting. It was not a referral. It came from online search. You don't really know this person. Like, are they going to show up, or are they just going to ghost you like any stranger might? Even if they do show up, do they have the right qualities that make a really good client for you? So you can do two things. You can have the booking process be more rigorous, and we'll talk about that, or you ask them questions up front that demonstrate your expertise and that communicate that your time is valuable. I'll show you a couple of examples, one in particular that I really love. And are you also reaching out in advance to confirm the appointment? Even if it's booked the same day, you might give yourself a 4-hour buffer, which a lot of these calendaring tools use, and say, look, you can't book an appointment with me within less than 4 hours. If it's after that, then I've got enough time to have a 5-10 minute break, shoot off an email or send a text message even to that person who's scheduled and say, really looking forward to talking to you. Thanks so much for answering my questions when you booked that meeting. I have a couple other questions. I just want to plant the seed, in your brain and have you come prepared to have this really productive conversation that we're going to have later. I can't wait to see you at 4 p.m. or whatever it is. That is going to be such a hook for you to have people show up and to make sure that they're also self-qualifying so that you do have that call drop off if they realize they're not a good fit. You don't need to spend the time on that. It's much more productive for you to have fewer meetings that are well qualified than a ton of meetings that take up your valuable time that are not well qualified. So we'll talk about receptionists later. I need to move that slide. So what does this mean? This means that we have to reduce interruptions in order to open up your time for productive tasks, right? And there's this dilemma where interruptions are killing your productivity and you want to minimize them, but you also want to maximize responsiveness. So how do we balance that? How do we minimize interruptions while also being really responsive to the good interruptions? We have to be able to identify the good interruptions and only respond quickly to those. We also have this dilemma where you are doing outbound communications, hopefully, to make sure that you're getting paid. You want to minimize that chase, those chores, those billing tasks, administrative things that you have to do that also consume your time. And you don't want to have to maximize, your invoice payments by working with a collections agency. You want to maximize your revenue, right, with the least possible effort and expenditure. You want to implement technology that syncs your processes and has less for you to manually work on, but at the same time, in a small practice or business or whatever format that you're operating in, you probably don't have dedicated IT support and you can't learn all these things yourself or go back to school for a CS degree. So, you need simple, intelligent tools that already have expertise baked into them. Like when I think about Calendly, I see all of the features that Calendly has for simple online scheduling. And I just need to follow their rubric. Like they have an email template for an event reminder that's already set up for me. I don't need to come up with my own copy. They've come up with it for me. Excellent. All I have to do is sign up and all the templates are there for me. That sounds like exactly what I want and need. The other dilemma is a little bit more psychological, which is, you want control over your practice, your business, your firm. You also need to let go of some things in order to delegate, in order to have work-life balance, in order to grow your business. Like if you think about the businesses that you most look up to, you think about your mentors, you think about businesses that you follow, that you envy even, the thing that you probably envy the most or near to the most is how they've been able to relinquish control and still be successful. Just sit with that for a second. It is one of the most powerful statements and displays of success in business to let go of the control dynamic that got you to where you are and to say, I believe that others can share in this success with me and that we will collectively be more successful and that I will be less stressed if I lean into receiving help and seeking out help and delegating and automating the things that I don't need to do anymore. And what I mean is like the dilemma here is because to start a business, to take that leap, you have to have a ton of control. You got to where you are because you have certain methods, you have certain specialties, you have certain skills that are undeniably valuable and worth building a business on. But once you've done that, in order to expand that business, you have to release the control that got you to this place. Okay, so that's a dilemma because you want to maximize your balance, right? So your control is shifting less from the day-to-day work to how much am I actually balancing work and life? What am I actually focusing on today? Does the business control me or do I control my business? Do I control how much time I'm going to put into this business today, right? And you can only make those choices if you have people who can help you, if you have systems that can help you. Okay?
Maddie, if I can just jump in, if I can just reiterate this point for everyone in the room and anyone watching later, like the replay, this is a really important point. I have worked with a lot of different startups and small businesses. I do some consulting work, and this is kind of that next step. People get to a certain point on their own, and it's pretty easy. The women in the room and a lot of our members are extremely capable, very talented. But then it gets to a point where, yes, you suddenly have all this additional work, stuff that you're not a specialist in, and that's okay. That's where you have to just kind of recognize, this is no longer my specialty. And if I want to scale my business, I need to pull in people who have that specialty. This is the AI or the tech that does that work for you. But I literally see so many people stuck at this point, and it's not until they add things in or add people in or add services or technology, that's when it gets them over that hump and into that whole next tier. So this is really, really important for women business owners. Well, any business owner, right? But yeah, great point. So thank you for being so clear about that.
Yeah, I could do a presentation just on this one slide, probably, although that would be visually not so stimulating. Maybe I wouldn't need a slide. But I love that topic. And Catherine, thanks for adding some extra color there about, how widely applicable it is too. Like if you don't think that applies to you, I'm sure that you could dig in and find that it does apply to you. So what are some of the solutions to these dilemmas? Well, we really have to think about what are the cost-effective and efficient systems? And I can't emphasize cost-effective enough, because if you're not in the habit of spending money on productivity and efficiency, it can really feel like a big leap of faith. Like there's one thing when you spend money to advertise and you're like, well, I obviously am going to get exposed to a bigger audience and that's going to help people find me who are potential clients. I obviously need to pay for a logo. I obviously need to pay for a business license and memberships and things that are critical for me to have a foot in the door and for me to be an established business. But When you get past that foundation and you are starting to up level, you're starting to see success, you feel the pain of the limited hours in the day and your personal energy and bandwidth, which is a whole nother presentation probably, but can you do work 12, 14 hours a day? Sure. Do you do really good work 12, 14 hours a day? I doubt it. So you have to think like, okay, only I can do this. If you're saying that, very often, you really have to confront your comfort zone, right? And think in the dead center of a target of a comfort zone. I could use a visual here. I think about like, that is the area where you're at the core, you're leading the strategy. As you expand and expand and expand, yes, you can do all those things, but that gets you farther away from your core value of the business owner, right? If you are doing admin, chores, assistant work for yourself, like, is that the highest and best use of your time? Think about hourly, what you can make if your entire day was booked up with clients. Let's say that it's $300 an hour. If you're making $300 an hour and you're doing assistant work, I don't have to do a class at college level math to figure out that an assistant does not cost me $300 an hour. Now, what is the actual cost to you versus the value if you fill the client in that spot? It is different, right? If you are able to earn $300 an hour, the opportunity cost is not necessarily $300 an hour. Your inputs are different, right? Let's say you have an assistant though, who is going to be at $15, $18 an hour, and they are able to bring in new revenue because they're chasing bills that are due, right? And they're going to reach out to all the existing clients. Now, if they bring in more than the total time spent times their hourly rate, that was productive, right? What is the likelihood that if you spend a day 300 times 8 versus the assistant $18 times 8 is going to be productive in spending their time that way? There's no way that that's worth your time, right? You cost $300 an hour. They cost $18 an hour. Who should be chasing down the clients versus who should be doing things only you can do, which is maybe a webinar for potential clients, maybe a seminar in-person event. Maybe you're going to a trade show. Maybe you're going to the community center. Maybe you're going to meet up with CAN WCC people. Maybe you are writing a blog post for a journal. Maybe you're working on your website, writing blog posts. Maybe you're setting up your next marketing campaign. Whatever it is, I guarantee that you want those things done by you and not by some assistant right now. Those are areas where you need to control your brand, your positioning, the budget, et cetera, that are worth trading off $300 for that hour that you're going to spend doing each of those tasks, right? So when we think about affordability, we have to think about like, what is the trade-off here? Like if it costs a certain amount, if Calendly costs $10 a month, does it make sense to save money on the assistant? Yeah, I mean, just pay $10 a month for Calendly and don't have someone like, having to, chase a bunch of things that could be done for you. And certainly you should not be doing that. So what are these systems that are best suited for small business owners like you? They're affordable without commitment. So if Calendly said, I'm going to take $10 a month, but I want you to sign up for a 5-year plan, I don't think so. It's a little bit too much skin in the game. It has to be affordable and it should not be an annual plan. At this point, when you're still learning and you're looking at the software that's going to be valuable to you, you're going to make a lot of changes as you find what actually works for you, what you find is intuitive for you. Like there are a lot of CRMs, for example, contact management, lead and client management systems. And you may find like the way that they visually display information is either totally in line with how you think or not at all with the way that your brain works. So you're going to try some things. You want to make sure that these are month-to-month services and not making you commit to a year when you don't even know what you're getting into. And you don't even know if you're going to like using them. And trust me, if you like using software, you will use it much more than you think you will. If you don't like using it, you're not going to use it as much as you intend to. So that's the first point. The second point is it really should be customizable. So get a piece of software or a service that you can grow with over time. And this is one of the main selection criteria that actually, when I was presenting with someone else years ago, they identified this as like one of the main things that they look for is the feature set of the software something that I see as valuable to me where I want to go and not just where I am right now. So if you look at a tool like MailChimp, it may be very feature rich and you might not need all those features right now, but if it gives you, I don't know, it's like a few thousand contacts for free the last time I checked, to be able to send newsletters and emails to, well, that's exactly what I need right now. And then I also see that they have these features when I get to that point where I need a landing page or I need connecting with my Facebook page, to get that messaging out from the email to social. Those features make sense to me. I don't need them right now, but I like the idea of if I sign up for MailChimp right now, then I can utilize those features when I'm ready for them. And that means less friction later on in your business when you don't want to be switching. They should be easy to use and monitor. So it's really important that it is not going to take a consultant to extract information and reports and data from the software that you're using. They should also be comprehensive. So if you can choose a CRM that also has a billing integration, that also has a calendaring integration, then you've got one or two fewer systems that you can use, fewer bills, less task switching, less tabs on Chrome, all of the things that distract us every day. It really helps to have that consolidated into one system and it talks better together. Integrating with your processes is so important. So if you don't have everything in one system, if they're integrated, meaning I can have an appointment booked in Calendly and that new lead who booked the appointment shows up in Salesforce with that appointment on the calendar, then I have an integration that gives me visibility into an activity that happened in one system now appears in my main system, right? And that's very important because otherwise it would just be a data entry task to say, I have an appointment, but the lead is not in my lead management system. I have to enter that person manually so that I can keep track of what happens with that lead. Obviously, the system to keep track of that is the most important thing, but the automation makes it efficient. If the system or solution is human, like, in the case of a assistant, receptionist, live website chat, maybe a marketing agency, you have reasonable discretion that you've bestowed on them, right? So one of the main complaints of I'm, outsourcing, or I've got a virtual assistant, or I've got a, virtual bookkeeper, if you've heard of Bench or things like that, they say this person really isn't working out. And it's like, well, why aren't they working out? Well, because they don't do things exactly how I want them to be done. And the next question is always, did you teach them how you want them to be done? And they say, well, yes. And then the question next is, are they doing things in a way that demonstrates their expertise? And should we look at if that's actually a better way of doing things? No, we haven't approached that. Like, imagine that you work with a bookkeeper and they actually have a better way of doing something. Or there's a marketing agency who's worked with thousands of clients and has collected a ton of expertise and is bestowing that on you, but you're resistant to it. It happens all the time. You have a comfort zone that you have insulated your business in, and then you bring in contractors who really are trying to bestow some of that expertise from all of the group experiences that they've had. And there's a resistance to it, and you limit the value of those providers, right? And that happens way more often, as long as your criteria in selecting that person is good, happens way more often than that person's actually a bad player, right? And they're probably, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a question in the chat that Veronica's a one-woman team, and does that work for her?
Yeah, absolutely, it works for you. So you have to have enough time in the day to have people who can be trained by you, and you have to be available to them to answer their questions. Like, let's say that I have Maddie's marketing agency. I'm going to make up my own business. And I have ads that I need to run. And I contract someone who on Upwork says they're really good at running Google Ads. Okay, so you're going to do this for me and for my clients. How do you do this? Okay, well, here's what's important about the way that I deliver marketing services to my clients. Okay, do they get that or not? Like, if there's a certain tone that my brand is known for, like maybe it's very clever and witty, and that person is creating ads that are neither, then we'd have to train them and say, like, let me expose you to more of the tone, brand, feel, style that I'm going for here. And either they get it or they don't, but we can't expect them to pick up on that, whether it's a one-woman show or a many-woman show. You have to spend the time training them. Now, are they retaining and conveying the information in those trainings? You have to determine whether or not they are getting it, right? So if they're not getting it, and if you have tried to teach them multiple times, then cut them loose and get someone else, right? I mean, you're not there to be their shepherd through their career. So if other people want that, good luck to them and find the next person, right? So there are plenty of freelancers and contractors out there, and it's really in your best interest to make sure that they have clear expectations from the get-go, really close hand-holding for the first couple weeks, and then it will be much, much, much easier. So in your schedule, if you have a new person who you have hired or contracted, you're going to have to be very available to them, or they are not going to be good at whatever job you've assigned them. There's no way for them to be successful if you don't lean into that. And that is on you, and that is time that you'll have to spend. Now, after that happens, especially if they're an expert, like especially if you're hiring someone who, let's say, has proven the ability to get their business through organic search on page 1 of Google every single time for local search results, they probably know what they're doing and their method for doing that. You don't need to be involved. You can give them like the discretion to make decisions, same as if you hire someone who is a 50 years in the business bookkeeper. You'd probably think, like, maybe not 50 years, that's extreme. Let's just say 10 years. 10 years in the business, like they probably know their way around books, right? They can probably do that accounting. So are you giving them discretion and letting them be the expert? That's one of the most important things when you're outsourcing or getting outside help. So let's talk about what these systems actually are that are most reliable for delivering value to a business. So you may have a landline. You probably don't. You probably have a cell phone. You might have a Google Voice number. Hopefully you have a VoIP number that's actually an independent app from your cell phone, so that you can see when people call your business number, it's different from your cell phone, and you can identify the calls that are actually business related, so that if there's an unknown number, hopefully it's more likely to be a client versus an unknown number on your cell phone. You can at least know that it's not business related. You're not marketing your cell phone number out there as like the way to get in touch with you. And this is really important because as you grow, it's very hard to get people to take your cell phone number out of their phones. And if you imagine, let's say for your photography business, Yvonne, let's say that you've got a team of photographers and you're the chief photographer and founder, right? Then, which is not a crazy thought, right? So you've got a whole team and everyone's still calling your cell phone because that's the number that's saved in their phone. You're going to pull your hair out. So you have to set up your systems for scale and for the future where you want to be. And I guarantee there is no future that you have identified on any vision board that has people calling your cell phone when they want to work with you, right? So it's between 25 and 50 bucks a month to have a VoIP phone system. That's US dollars, but to have a VoIP phone system that does everything under the sun for you, and depending on taxes, it's going to be a few more bucks. And that allows you to carry your cell phone, but to have a different number that's attached to it through an app that you will download. And it's also very easy to forward that number rather than your cell phone to a receptionist service so that they can answer calls for you and then hit you up on your cell phone when actually there's a relevant call that shows up from Smith AI that says, okay, this is someone who we've vetted and screened for you. Now I have the clarity in what I'm actually going to answer right now. So when we think about like routing and handling and forwarding those calls, you have to think about like, can I actually forward the phone number that I've got right now? So your cell phone is not going to work unless you want everyone, handling every single call that comes to your personal cell phone, which most people don't want. There are some systems that are interactive voice response, press 1 for new clients, press 2 for existing clients. The businesses need to be so large in order for that to be productive, right? Versus live call handling, which is an excellent experience as long as the person who's handling that sounds friendly and helpful and interested in who's calling, and is good at screening those calls. And we also have the difference between a message taking service and a receptionist service that really embodies what an in-house experience would be like. And other differences in sort of how call handling can happen. Well, you can choose to be onshore or offshore, so to speak. You can have a dedicated or distributed team, and you can have remote versus in-house, obviously. Now, in-house, if it's anything like how it is in the US, it's been extremely expensive to make hires this year. Some indications that salary is going to, go down with inflation, but it's probably not going to go down that much. Salaries typically don't get that suppressed. So when we look at what's scalable for my business, we have to consider, the freelancing or outsourcing or part-time staff that is less of a commitment for you to be responsible for someone's livelihood. And I think about it that way because it's a lot of responsibility, not just to train and manage someone, but also to be responsible for their paycheck, their mortgage payment. Like there are a lot of things that start to weigh pretty heavily on you when you hire staff. And if you've done that, then you know what a serious commitment that is. So my advice is always bring those freelancers on, bring those outsourcers on and learn from them, determine what you actually like and want and what's productive to spend money on, and have them have a wide range of things that they can contribute and that you can learn from, and then determine who do you actually need to hire. For example, do you need to outsource photography? No, you would hire another staff photographer in that business. Would you outsource health coaching? No, you would hire a coaching partner or staff member, right? Who is an expert in that. They would work for you. That is your method that they are carrying out. That's the definition of staff, right? But for people who are doing, adjacent jobs that is not your core service, that is not neither coaching nor photography, you should be thinking, is that something that actually adds value to my business if I were to sell it? Like, why would someone pay for the salaries of my assistants versus paying for the value of my photography team, my coaching team, right? Think about that for a second. What actually adds value? Because you're spending a lot of time and money on staff if you choose to go that route. Phone systems, the number one thing that I'm going to say here, I know I'm talking a lot and I haven't gotten through enough slides, is if you have not called your phone, your business phone, if you have one, your cell phone should ring, but your business phone number, if you have a business phone number, please have someone call. You guys can do it for each other even, but not right now, wait until this is over. Have someone call your business number and count how many rings they hear. And as soon as you hear one ring, pick up, or at least count the rings before you pick up. You will find sometimes that there are many rings before you even hear one ring. And that is a problem. People may be hanging up before you even hear the phone ring to pick up. So be mindful that your phone system is not perfect, that it's run by other human beings in another building somewhere. And there can be problems with that. We actually have a guide in this blog post, how to get crystal clear VoIP. And he has a template email that you can send to your phone provider if you do hear a lag there, because if someone is hearing 8 rings, which we have seen in other phone providers, and then you only hear one, they may have hung up before you actually can get to the phone. right? And you want to make sure that that's taken care of, because that's one of the easiest wins you can possibly have. You also want to make sure that your email system is set up so that it's not all coming from you. One of the best things that you can do is create an alias and also have reminders, prompts, and rules in your email system, such as using Front app. Mailshake is another great one. There are a lot of good email systems that now allow you to schedule emails, to set snooze and reminders, and have rules and filters in place so that you can get things into the right inbox or bucket or assignment to another team member if you have someone, or even forward, for example, to Smith AI. We make outbound calls every time, let's say, a client gets a new lead form on their website. It might automatically push to us and we make an outbound call. So how can you drive efficiency and clear out your inbox? That is one of the things that's probably consuming time for you, sorting out the wheat from the chaff. Text messaging, man, if you don't have text messaging associated to your business phone number, again, you need a business phone number to do that. It probably is included and you might be missing some texts. So I would look very carefully if you have a business number and if you're getting text messages, or contact them if you're not sure and see how you can check those text messages. Typically it's through the app on your phone. Very, very important that you're not missing those, because people, regardless of generation, do prefer to send a text. They also really like to have chat. And what chat does is it allows you to have an asynchronous or less pressured conversation. It allows you to have a silent conversation, and it allows you to have the entire transcript of a conversation, unless you have transcription and recording on your phone line. So it can be very, very helpful to go back and look at what are the questions people are asking on website chat. What are the discrete topics that they don't want to call in and discuss? What are the who are the leads I'm missing by not offering like texting and chat? Because not everyone is comfortable calling, for example, health and wellness coaching, right? You probably encounter people who have an interest in weight reduction or health benefits that they're not currently experiencing right now, given a life circumstance, right? Not everyone is going to be comfortable getting on the phone and saying, I feel this, or I need this, or, you know, I was advised to come talk to you, right? Or it's probably sometimes uncomfortable. It's certainly uncomfortable in medical, financial, legal areas, and probably less so with photography, but it may be a convenience when that potential client of yours is at work, their boss is right there, they've been seen getting up to go to lunch in the bathroom and whatever, and they don't want to get up yet again to have a personal phone call. Chat is really excellent for that. And so is texting. They can just have that conversation, reach out to you, and nobody hears anything. What a huge benefit to reduce like the delay in someone getting in touch with you. If they see that they can chat, if they see that they can message you on Facebook, that's a great way to be able to get them to have that conversation with you now. Imagine that they're presented with two businesses. They've seen two Facebook pages, referrals from a friend on Facebook. Let's say your potential client posted any photographer recommendations. Well, you were named and a competing business was named. They go to the Facebook page and one of them says like, text us, or, you know, like visit our website, or, you know, book a consultation, or, you know, send us a message. And when you open up that Facebook message, they're like, this business responds typically in, you know, just a few minutes, versus the competition that they don't have any of those things. Well, who is going to get that lead? The first one, right? The one that looks ready to operate, ready for business, ready to respond, right? It's very welcoming to show all the ways that someone can get in touch with you. That's going to create that behavior. So what are some other things that are good about chat? Well, you can actually initiate a phone call from a chat. Someone can elect to say, I'd really like to get on the phone if the conversation is getting more in depth. It can also help with intake and screening. Someone might say, I would like to schedule an appointment, and you can have an automatic playbook in chat that says, great, we need to ask a few questions first, like, where are you located? Are you in even the same, you know, area? Would you be willing to drive to that person for a private consultation or a booked event, zip code is probably important to most businesses. What is your budget? What is the date that you'd like the service, or how soon are you available? Like, there are some questions before you even get to the booking that you can implement in chat that we'll also see in intake. So we sort of covered this already, but how are potential clients being handled? Is it a software or a service that's doing a lot of the interaction, right? So if you have someone call in, is that call being tracked and recorded through an advertisement? Is that call getting logged in your contact system? And who is that call being handled by? That is all relevant for, let me skip ahead, to the entire workflow, right? So someone has some introduction to your business, they were referred, they read a review, they found your website. Then there's a contact method that there's going to use. They emailed in, they texted in, they sent you a Facebook message. And now who actually was responding? And what happens when they actually respond? Are they well qualified, or are they not well qualified and they need to be referred out for future clients and goodwill? Or are they well qualified and we have to think, okay, we need to intake, screen, schedule them. If they're ready to move forward, then we might immediately, send them a client agreement, or if it's delayed, we may need to nurture and follow up with them, right? So there are a lot of different solutions that you're going to involve here. And the first step is just making sure that those calls are handled properly. There's a lot on this slide, and I will share this whole deck so that you can look at it later, but everything needs to be dialed in so that calls can reach you, and they reach you at reasonable hours. And there's a, people or service in place to help that happen if you need it, or you at least reliably know that they're coming to you. Step 2 is to make sure that you are capturing and qualifying leads properly. You want to think about how do I standardize the questions that I'm asking? And the most important thing is, how do I set how much time I need to allocate to the next step, which is the calendar appointment, right? So if I have my criteria, can I then determine what is the set of 5 to 7 questions that I need to ask in order to capture and qualify leads? So look back at the 5 leads who you won and the 5 leads who you didn't win in the last 3 months, let's say, maybe a year, and who would you have wanted to win? Or who would you have rather not worked with, actually? And how does that coalesce into the criteria that you need to use to bring in the best new clients, right? So let's say there's someone who was a bit too far away and you really resented driving all the way to that client to do the work for them, and you were spending too much gas money. Maybe there was a client who you missed out on because you weren't responsive enough, or you didn't have the ability to identify one of the most important things to work with you, and you can communicate that in the intake process. Meaning, if you are not demonstrating expertise in the way that you ask questions, they may have less faith that you're actually the expert who can help them. So if you're only asking basic questions and you're doing health and wellness coaching and you don't ask anything specific to what are your health and wellness goals, they may actually be turned off and go to someone who says I want to go with someone who's asking me up front, more specifics about what I need here, so that I have faith that they're going to be focused on my goals, right? So your intake questions convey your expertise, and they also do you a service by screening people the same way every time. And I can almost guarantee that in any room of a small group of business owners, there's at least a few people who are getting on the phone, feeling it out, and saying, this person sounds like a good potential client. Now, depending on the maturity of your business, you may find I am not interested in having as many new clients, or I'm interested in having any client who's going to work with me because I just got started, right? So if you're really mature, you're probably going to be pickier. But even with that said, you really have to think about what am I conveying to the marketplace, my potential leads, if I don't ask the same questions every time? Am I betraying my business, my advertising, my marketing efforts? Am I betraying my future staff who I can't train unless I've documented this? As soon as you document, like, what are the questions I need to ask when I'm engaging these leads and determining if they're qualified to work with me? I'm asking about timing and budget and scheduling and fit. Then I can train someone to do that. If I say, well, just listen to me on the phone a few times and you'll get the hang of it, that's not a process, right? So you have to streamline it. You have to be consistent in order to ever be able to delegate it, okay? So there are some examples here from a lawyer and some flooring examples of intake forms that I just thought are really effective in capturing the relevant information. Obviously, if you're doing flooring, you need to know the square foot. If you're doing coaching, what's the similar question? If you're doing photography, what's the similar question? Like, it has to be specific and not a generic intake form with a big blank box that says, tell us more. Like, you should be asking specific questions. And if your website doesn't have that, I would fix that. You might also have fun tools that allow people to estimate how much it would take to do it yourself. For example, you want to do your own photography? It costs this much money to have a really nice camera. It costs this much money to have an editor do all this work. Don't you see the value in having it all bundled with my services? Definitely fill out the form. Cool.
I once had someone kind of ask me, like, isn't it very impersonal to have this kind of contact form and get all this information? Don't they feel like, I'm kind of pushing them away? And what you were saying about, they see the expertise. Oftentimes people tend to say, like, oh, this is how I know it's for me. Like, they won't fill out the form unless they're kind of like, oh, they're focused on exactly the thing that I want. Yeah, you know what? I'll definitely fill out this form. It really is such a great communication tool.
Yes, exactly. It is a great communication tool. Like, imagine here, a law firm only does family law, social security, disability, or other. And if it's other, you actually can't finish filling out the form or you get a referral. If you fill out one of those, you're like, I am definitely in the right place. Is there a court hearing scheduled in your case? Yes, it's tomorrow or whenever it is. Like, I need an attorney now. Like, just think about the sense of urgency and relief that they're going to have when they fill out these questions and you're like, these are exactly the questions you should be asking me. Thank you. Yes, that's what's important to me, right? And they should feel that way. So if you're not doing that, I would also ask them, like, I would look at the conversations you have after you get those intake forms. And if you still need to ask the same questions every single time to determine if they're a fit or not, and there is actually like a really cool indylaw.com/call. I'm just going to put this in the chat. I pulled this up specifically to share with you all. So sorry if you hear my puppy barking. So let's say that I want to have a consultation with Joey. And by the way, if you need a trademark, he's a very cool, competent guy. He has a brand protection consult. Now, all this is basic. And then he's got like this understanding that we exclusively help businesses with trademarks. If you need other legal help, we'll refer you to someone else. I agree. So you were getting commitment. I'd like help with trademarks. What's the word or phrase then that you want to trademark? Prove it, right? How soon are you looking to start? Does our timing align? Package prices? How did you hear about us? Anything else that's important? Have you seen our Facebook ads? Apparently that's really important and they need you to answer that. Probably because they're spending money on Facebook, right? And why not? You're already at the end of the question. You're going to submit the form. So what I love here is that you're getting the sort of contract with like, this is important to me and this is when it's important. And yes, I can afford it. And I am going to give credit to the person who referred me. Like, that is extremely powerful to set that expectation. And there we go. We're loaded. So obviously I'm running out of time. Calendaring. If you don't have calendaring, then you don't actually get the commitment after someone is contacting you. The worst case is that you have to like be playing phone tag. So if someone calls in, the default setting should be, they sound qualified, I'm going to book them for a call back later or an appointment with the principal owner, you. And if you find this not a fit, you could cancel it and say, I'm going to refer you to somebody else after reviewing those intake questions. But you should have people who can schedule qualified leads on your calendar, and also who can do that themselves by themselves on your website, just like we saw with Joey. There are a lot of examples here. You want to make sure that it's branded and you have the calendar types of the clients you serve and of the leads, and that you're following up if you don't have an immediate action after that appointment. So if someone calls in or if someone has a meeting with you and you only do one outbound call, you have a very less than 50% likelihood that you're going to connect with them again and that business is going to move forward. If you call 6 times, you have 93% confidence that you have contacted everyone who is going to pay you at that point, and every incremental follow-up after that is giving you diminishing returns, or not as substantial returns, right? So think about that for a second. How many leads do you have who actually need a little bit of nudge or follow-up that this is important to them? They want you to connect with them. There's money to be spent with them, but you're not doing it. Now, a service like ours can do that for you, or you can do that yourself if you have the extra time, or your assistant can do that. But that is a really valuable thing to say, like, I want to work with you, and people will be motivated to choose your business if you demonstrate that to them. So I'm going to move really quickly through the next things. Obviously, it's important to collect payment. We've talked about chasing. Make sure that you are holding your clients accountable to paying you. Make sure also that you have a list of referral partners and that you have you've systematized that, and that you follow up with those who give you referrals and say thank you, and also make it very clear that your business runs on referrals and here's the best way to send referrals to you. And that you have also put them on your list would help encourage them to send more leads to you. 7, recording all of your data in one place and being able to track the success of your marketing and other efforts, your client engagement efforts, your service efforts. This is one of the most important things. In Smith AI, we have a dashboard. We actually show like how much activity was done on the phone for you. And this is something similar that you should be able to see, like how much work was produced and how much, revenue and benefit came out of that work that we did. So make sure that your systems give you access to that data that says we can make really good informed decisions after doing this work or doing new work or expanding our marketing or expanding our services or zip codes or whatever. I want to make sure that we see that that is productive and that it's yielding appointments scheduled. It's yielding like more intake fills coming in, form fills coming in. So what do you do next? So I know we're on time. Just look at the amount of time that you're spending and how you can delegate, streamline, automate, maybe cut it completely, or continue doing it yourself if it's really critical. And prioritize it by importance and urgency. If you haven't heard of the Eisenhower decision matrix, I really encourage you to look at that. Data entry and lead follow-up, those are things you can automate with an email drip. It's things that you can automate with certain integrations, getting that data from the call into Salesforce, for example. And there are other things that need to be really a human touch. And those are the consultations. That's where your expertise comes in. And just make a couple changes and say, like, I'm going to put in a calendaring system on my website with the right intake questions. And I'm going to see over the next month how that impacts the calls that are scheduled and the leads that are qualified. Smith AI, I think that you can find more about that, about Catherine, as we're up on time. But I did want to just share that you do get $100 off as a member, and that you can reach us at any time. I'm going to share the calendar link in the chat so that you can schedule an appointment if you're interested. And I'm sure that Catherine can also share this in follow-up. And I'll put the code in here as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I know that no problem. But I hope this is helpful to you. And what I will also do, Catherine, is just share the slides from today so that everyone can review them afterwards. And let me make sure that I open up the link. There we go.
Honestly, I think one of the biggest takeaways I took from this was that as you kind of go through and you operationalize all of these pieces, and especially if you integrate technology, I'm just looking at it from like a CEO perspective, how easy it would be to kind of create projections, like revenue projections and sales lead projections, when you have this information. It's really hard to do otherwise. And this would make that so easy.
Yes, definitely. You want to be able to track like how much did it cost you and how much did you benefit from all the main lead channels that are coming in. And I think that you'll find that you can reward your referrals a lot more than you may be. You can also identify that things that you see others doing may not be that productive for them or you. And be careful just trying to emulate others, because you can spend a lot of money advertising on Google, for example. And if you can't trace that back to meaningful business, you really have to think, is this something I think should work? And is it working, or is it really working? Because it's very easy to say, like, I see my competitor doing that and I would like it to work. But the reality is, it's very expensive, and you might want to put your money elsewhere. So yeah. Thanks for having me, Catherine. And I know that we're over, so I'll just look forward to the next one where we can share more insights together.
Indeed. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Maddie, for your insights. So appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye all.